Logan was beginning to feel very foolish. He had arranged this romantic weekend, the final long weekend of summer, in hopes of salvaging his relationship with Mel. He'd even arranged to borrow this cabin in the wilds of the Cypress Hills, and she had stood him up, leaving him very foolish indeed. Logan went back to the cabin for another Jack and Coke. It was a nice cabin, with a kitchen, a fireplace, and a huge picture window, and 3 large bedrooms. His buddy was an amateur astronomer. Apparently the group used it when they held their star parties here in the Dark Hills. And now Logan was here, all by his lonesome, getting angrier and drunker as the darkness took control. She wasn't coming. She was probably with him, the other guy. He tried, of course, to call, but there was no cell coverage in the hills and no landline in the cabin. So he was stuck here, smack dab in the middle of nowhere, all by himself. What a bloody fool. Oh well, a guy can always get drunk. And that is what Logan decided to do. It was too dark to even think about driving out. Instead, he sat on the cabin steps and stared up at the night sky while feeling very sorry for himself. Logan had never quite fit in. He always felt different from the other people, although he couldn't have explained why. Usually he tried to ignore it with a little help from his friends, Jack. So Logan sipped on his drink and surrendered himself to the bitter ecstasy of self-pity. But after a while, his troubles began to fade, and for once, he stopped thinking about himself. It might have been the whiskey, but no, it was the stars. All those stars, billions of them. It was so dark in these hills that every pinpoint of light in the heavens was clearly visible. Logan had never seen so many stars. No wonder the astronomers had their observation parties here. Logan was gripped by a sensation he hadn't experienced for a long time. A sense of wonder. To hell with Melissa. If she didn't want him, then fine. It was time to move on. He'd go to bed in a while, and tomorrow head back home. But as Logan continued to stare up, he noticed that one of the lights was moving. A shooting star? No, a meteor would flash across the sky. A satellite? Maybe that Starlink thing of Elon Musk. The light, a twinkling bluish orb, seemed to be getting larger. At first, Logan thought his eyes and Jack Daniels were playing a trick on him. But no, it was definitely getting bigger, like it was coming to Earth. Maybe it was a meteorite. Well, whatever it was, it moved incredibly fast and was getting brighter and brighter by the moment. It was beginning to hurt his eyes. And then Logan was suddenly afraid, wondering if it was going to hit. And he was on his feet, starting to run, when the object landed in the trees several hundred meters away. Landed. That was the right word, right? There was no impact. The thing had simply come to Earth. Logan felt icy fingers of dread running up and down his spine. He was alone in the woods in the dark, and there was something strange, something he didn't understand, something from space among the nearby trees. His first impulse was to go back inside the cabin and close the door, to hide from the thing, whatever it was, to go to bed and pull the blankets over his head. But what if it started a fire? Logan realized he had no choice but to investigate. An intense white glow was now coming from behind the dark trees, and Logan forced himself to walk slowly towards it, wishing he had some sort of weapon. But why? Why think of that? What good would it do? At least the intense silvery white light wasn't the orange and yellow flame of a forest fire. But then, what was it? Logan's eyes had adjusted to the darkness, and the white light made it easy to find his way, which is why he saw the dark figure approach him. Once again, Logan wanted to turn on his heels and run to the cabin. Anywhere. but somehow he knew it wouldn't work. And then he heard, "Stay where you are, Logan." What the hell? Was it someone he knew? Melanie? And then the soft, eerie voice said, "You can't get away." Logan stood and watched. The dark figure approached, and it was a child. A strange-looking child, short and stunted, dressed entirely in black, with pale, glowing skin, a mop of black hair, and eyes that were dead black. Logan took a step back in horror as he realized this must be one of the infamous Black Eyed Children. The concept of them both fascinated and terrified him. He had both read and heard stories about them all over the internet. He was afraid to look out his window at night, in case the Black Eyed Children were out there, but while they frightened him, Logan was haunted by a strange sense of familiarity, like he'd known of them in some weird dream or nightmare. The child didn't walk. Instead, he seemed to glide, and Logan realized that he himself was shuffling forwards, shuffling towards it, even though he really wanted to turn and run. It was small. He came only up to Logan's chest, and in spite of the gloom, he could see it clearly. The pinched white face, the black hair, and the eyes. He guessed it was a male. "We have been waiting for you," the kid said. But its lips didn't move. He was hearing the words by telepathy. "Who's we?" Logan spluttered. "The others. Surely you remember." And then Logan did remember. It happened when he was a kid, when he lived in a big house outside the city. Logan had woken in the middle of the night to find his room filled with an intense silvery white light. The same light he could now see behind the strand of fir trees. His parents were there, and he wondered if he was in trouble, but they simply took him by the hand and led him from the room and out into the night, a night as bright as day. Across the road in a vacant field was a huge structure glowing like burning metal, and a steady stream of people, both adults and children, were making their way towards it and vanishing into the intense light. Logan and his parents, each holding one of his hands, walked into the light, and on the other side they found a room full of smoke, bright flashing lights, and a cacophony of noise, and a host of odd people. There were a number of kids like Logan's current escort, short kids with dead white skin, wild black hair, and eyes like pools of oily darkness. But there were also grey aliens, some wearing black Gestapo uniforms, and many normal-looking people, parents, kids from school, neighbours. And then Logan couldn't remember, didn't want to remember anymore. But what Logan wanted was of no importance. Melanie felt like a complete fool. She'd planned to spend the evening with Zach, only to have the creep stand her up. Now she was driving through the Cypress Hills in the dark while trying to come up with a story for Logan. Melanie had been slowly following a dirt road that led steadily upwards, these hills being the highest point of elevation in Canada between the Great Lakes and Rocky Mountains. She drove haltingly, as she could see nothing beyond the cone of light cast by her high beams, but it seemed to be getting brighter. Her eyes must be adjusting to the dark, she told herself, or there must be a full moon. Melanie went around a curve, and her LED lights illuminated the forlorn cabin. Her first impression was that it was a dump, just the sort of place Logan would pick for a romantic weekend. Her feelings for Logan were complicated. Once upon a time, she was passionately in love with him. She thought he was the best thing that had ever happened to her, but now the passion had turned to rust. Logan was clingy. He never gave her space, and Melanie had lots of friends she wanted to spend time with, But Logan didn't like it. He wanted her all to himself, and besides, he had no drive, no ambition. Melanie wouldn't say that Logan had actually pushed her into the arms of Zach. Zach the creep who'd never responded to any of her calls and texts. What a dirtbag. She felt used and dirty. Logan wasn't perfect, but she knew him. Maybe he'd believe that she had car trouble, a flat tire. No, that was too obvious. She got lost, which was easy to do in these damn hills when your GPS was of no use. It was so dark it was almost frightening. Well, she was here now. There was Logan's Camry parked beside the cabin. But where the hell was he? She figured that he must have seen the beams from her headlights and come out to greet her, but there were no signs of life. The cabin looked empty. She turned on the high beams. Her Nissan Rouge had powerful LED lights and shone them towards the front, and it really did look deserted. So she stepped out the car and was about to call out, but something restrained her. It was just a little too dark and quiet. There wasn't a sound in the forest. And at night, was that normal? The silence? She contemplated getting back into her car for her own safety. She didn't even try to pretend she wasn't scared. Oh, where was that damn Logan? When suddenly, a figure appeared on the porch, and Melanie could see, much to her astonishment, it was a child. What was a child doing out here in the middle of the night? In the middle of nowhere? But Melanie had a second shock, for even though the kid was impaled by beams from her headlights, it didn't appear to have a shadow. The kid stepped down from the porch and began to move towards her, and he didn't appear to be walking, but floating, and as it drew closer she could see that it was a boy. At least she thought it was a boy. Her high beams showed a pinched, white face, unruly black hair, and black eyes, like two pools of hypnotizing darkness. Just two dark pits where eyes should have been. Her brain was screaming to put the car in reverse and get the hell out of there, but she couldn't move. She was paralyzed, and then she heard a voice say, "Melanie?" The thing, the boy, whatever, had come up to her driver's side window, and without thinking she automatically lowered it. "Where's Logan?" She said it aloud. Even though the kid's lips didn't move, she heard a voice in her head say, "He wants you to come with me." "Where?" "With the others." Melanie was determined not to go. She wasn't going to go. Damn it. But instead she got out of the car. The kid floated off into the darkness, and Melanie shuffled after it, after him, even though she really wanted to run away. They moved through the trees towards the glowing light beyond them, and then with relief, Melanie saw Logan coming towards them. But was it Logan? He seemed different. And then a voice, Logan's voice, exploded in her head. "Zach didn't come." It was a statement, but how did he know? How did he find out? Logan's voice sounded in her head. "It doesn't matter. You are meant to be my intended. It has been decided." Melanie was confused. Who's they? What's been decided? Then suddenly, it was all too much, and Melanie staggered, and would have fallen had Logan not stepped forward and seized her in his arms. Instinctively, she looked up and into his eyes, and there were two dead black things that seemed to radiate darkness and despair, which seemed to bore into her, freezing her at will. "They're waiting for you. The others are waiting. Come." And so she did. And as she walked with the man who she knew was Logan, walked with him and the strange unearthly kid as they went into the darkness, and she saw the others, A number of weird kids identical to her strange companion, stunted, with dead white skin, wild black hair, and eyes like pools of oily darkness. But she also saw grey aliens, some wearing black Gestapo uniforms, and some normal-looking people. They were all staring at her. And that's when Melanie began screaming. Melanie and Logan now live in a big house in a rural area outside the city. They keep to themselves, but the neighbors have noticed that Melanie is heavily pregnant. They are also aware that a kid lives with them, an odd-looking kid, abnormally short, abnormally pale, with a shock of wild black hair, so black it looks abnormal too. Melanie, Logan, and the kid are seldom seen in daylight, but when they are, they're always wearing sunglasses, like they had something wrong with their eyes. Last Halloween, a bunch of local pranksters thought it would be funny to pretend to be black-eyed children and go door to door demanding to be let in. They got a hold of some black contact lenses and dubbed their face with white paint, dressed in dark hoodies, and went calling on Halloween night. Late, long after the darkness had taken control, they knocked and kicked Logan and Melanie's door and rang their bell. But instead of trick or treat, they cried out, "Please let us in, please, we're lost and cold and want to call our mummy." The door was thrown open, and the whole family, Logan, pregnant Melanie, and their kid, stood regarding them with their dead black eyes, from which the darkness radiated as an almost positive quality, and in unison they said, "Won't you come in?" The kids all ran away, but that didn't save them from the nightmares of the huge structure, bright as day and glowing like burning metal. And the front of the building was wide open as the kids walked towards the intense glare, and on the other side to a room full of smoke and bright flashing lights, and weird people, small kids with dead white skin. It's a place where no one can hear you scream. "Won't you come in?"